A lot of people ask me if I've ever had any paranormal experiences, and I have to answer yes, I have, but only about 4 or 5, which isn't a lot, having lived here in Gettysburg for 30 some years. But only 2 of those were actual visuals, which I actually saw an apparition. One night, I was going back to my house, and it had rained, but it had stopped raining, and my house is on Carlisle Street, which is on the site where the Confederate troops drove the Union troops from their positions on Barlow's Knoll. So in other words, through that area and through the fields behind my house, which are pristine, virtually the way they looked at the time of the battle, there was a great deal of panic, a great feel of victory by the Confederates as they chased these Union troops down and through the area. Many of them were shot down and killed right where my house sits. And I was driving back into the back alley there behind my house, and I came just over the little hill and looked down and saw a form down there in a misty, ropey type substance that had sort of a blue, kind of a blue glow inside of it. And your mind tries to explain things. The first thing I thought was, oh, it's a dog. And then my vision told me, no, it's too big. My mind said, well, then it's a deer. My vision said, no, it's upright, it's tall. My mind then said, it's a prowler. In other words, I recognized it as a human form that last time. So I stepped on the gas in my van and headed right towards it. As I moved towards it rapidly, it began to move, and it moved across the alley like this. I couldn't see any legs or anything, but it was about the height of a man, and into a little area which was a cul-de-sac formed by my neighbor's garage, my garage, and my 6-foot fence. I pulled in right behind it, and there was nothing. My light in my backyard, which is activated by motion, did not go on. My dog did not bark at an intruder. I parked my van in the garage, closed the door, and waited. 5, 6, 8 minutes, nothing came out. But as I say in my book, you cannot outwait a ghost and eternity. The letters that I have received over the last 10 years since I wrote the very first Ghosts of Gettysburg book, I believe have maintained a seriousness throughout. People who have had an experience of the paranormal, it in a way kind of changes their life. They will never look at things quite the same again. It's suddenly an affirmation that there is something that goes on after we die when you've experienced something like these people who've written to me have experienced here at Gettysburg or anywhere. Some people have said that these spirits or ghosts are actually demons sent here to confuse us, and I disagree with that. If they are demons, they're pretty impotent demons. They haven't done a whole lot of the nearly almost 500 stories I've collected about the battle and other battlefields. Only 2 are malevolent spirits where they actually tried to harm someone. The rest of the spirits seem just want to be recognized or seen. I mean, after 100 some years, it's just nice to be noticed, I guess. Many of them are playful. They'll move things around. As far as harm coming from them, I don't think people have much to fear. As far as finding the spirits here at Gettysburg, that's a good question, and I wish they would publish a schedule when they're going to show up and where they're going to show up, because we could probably take a lot of people out there and make them real happy. We don't know when it's going to happen and when it isn't. I think it's has to do with 2 things. Number one, I think people have to be accepting of the fact that yes, there is another realm that we don't know much about that exists parallel to this one. If you're accepting of that, chances are you're going to probably find yourself in a situation where you're going to see or experience or hear the paranormal. But also keep in mind, if indeed there is a paranormal entity, there are paranormal entities out there, it's kind of up to them too. You know, they have to make a decision to reveal themselves to us. West Confederate Avenue is the avenue that runs along the spine of Seminary Ridge, the southern section south of where the Lutheran Theological Seminary is. And it was the main Confederate battle line. It's the area where Pickett's charge launched itself. And it's also further south, the area where Longstreet's men attacked on the day before, on July 2nd, attacked the Round Tops. So that was the main Confederate battle line. There are a number of stories out there. The woods there at the Lee Monument, the Point of Woods, is supposed to be haunted. People see things and hear things out there. It was where I first got my first photographs of these orbs when I was with Rick Fisher, president of the Pennsylvania Ghost Hunter Society. He was using his thermal scanner, which looks like a pistol, and you can scan around and you get an ambient temperature. All of a sudden, it will drop from 40 degrees to -12. He'll say, take a picture, you take a picture, and probably 8 times out of 10, there's an orb or ectoplasm, the misty, ropey substance in that photograph. So we know then, because of that, because of my experiences out on Pickett's Charge on West Confederate Avenue, that there is a quality to these orbs that has to do with temperature as well. Jennie Wade was the only civilian killed in this 3-day battle that wounded 51 or killed 51,000 soldiers, the military people. She was killed the morning of July 3rd. A stray bullet went through 2 doors, hit her in the back. There was a lot of activity around her house anyhow. Actually, it wasn't her house. It was where her sister was living, who had just delivered a baby, which was the reason why she was in town taking care of her, instead of safely out of town. She got stuck in town taking care of her sister. And so it was just happenstance that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was actually baking bread to help feed the soldiers that had been gathered around her house. Unfortunately, they were Union soldiers, so they drew fire from Confederates farther north into the town. We took Carol Kirkpatrick through that building. Carol is probably one of the foremost psychics in the country. She immediately felt that there was an unfinished mourning. She knew nothing about the history of the house and the family. It was kind of sad because Jennie died and really didn't know her father. She was with her mother and her sister. Her father had been institutionalized when she was only 7 years old. So sadly, here's a young lady who was killed and never really got to know her dad very well. Carol Kirkpatrick said that there was an unfinished mourning. She went through the entire house. We got down into the basement, and there's a chain that runs from one stone wall to a pillar, and that separates an area which has a mannequin, a representation of what the cellar looked like at the time Jennie's body was placed down there, and it separates that so that the visitors can't get into that area. And it's a small chain. As everyone was leaving, one person looked back and looked at the chain, and without having been touched, it began to swing. It moved as if it was one solid piece. There was no wave action to it, like if you would touch it, that's how it would move. It moved as one solid piece. He pipes up and he says, "Carol, look at this." She turns around and blurts out, "Oh, it's Jennie's father." He was the one she felt didn't have time to mourn. That was the unfinished mourning that she had felt going through the house. She didn't realize that, sure enough, Jennie's father at the time of her death was incarcerated. He probably he knew about this huge battle because he was out at the almshouse on the battlefield, basically. Then, apparently, whatever happened to him in the prison wasn't too pleasant because he kind of lost his mind then after that, and then went into the asylum, the local asylum. He knew that the fighting was going on, but felt his family was safe because these men didn't make war on civilians. How horrible it must have been for him to realize in his moments of lucidity that out of all the people that were in Gettysburg, only one civilian was killed, and it was his daughter. During the filming of the movie Gettysburg, there was a huge encampment of reenactors, of people who actually played the roles of the soldiers in the battle scenes. And this encampment was anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 at any one time. And they set up tents, and they looked just like the encampment did during the battle, with a few small exceptions. Which is interesting because they also had a huge number of paranormal events occur out on that site. Everything from the campfires, once again, out in the field. As they approached them to see who was building the campfires, they would die down. By the time they got to them, there was nothing there. To the rumbling of artillery going through the woods in the middle of the night. A couple of the stories that are really interesting, and I think these prove a point, which we'll get to in a minute. A couple of the stories are very interesting. One, for example, is of a guard who was out there, and it was late at night, 2 in the morning, and he's supposed to stop everybody. You're supposed to have a pass to get into the encampment. Up rides a Confederate officer, complete with all the regalia and the uniform and everything on the horse. And the fellow gets out of his little cubicle, and he says, "I'm sorry, I have to see your pass, please." And the Confederate just looked at him in kind of a strange way, disappeared. Next morning, the fellow resigned. Didn't want to be guard out there anymore. Another interesting story from that area is that a couple of fellows were in one of the little dog tents. A tremendous thunderstorm starts up. And the one fellow got out of the tent and was looking at the thunder and the lightning and everything. It hadn't started raining yet. And his friends, he called to his friends, "Come here, you got to see this." Across the road, not 30 yards from them, was a Confederate regiment realigning itself as if getting ready to go into battle. And they thought they were crazy, because here are these guys with their nails on the bottom of their shoes and soaking wet, and with bayonets fixed, basically very, very efficient lightning rods standing out there. And the lightning's flashing all about them, getting ready to advance in the battle. Huge lightning bolt flashes, and as the men at the pup tent look out and their eyes adjust, they realize that the unit has vanished. The number of events out at this encampment leads me to believe that occasionally, just as we can see them, the ghosts, occasionally they can see us. When they're in a situation where they see all these reenactors encamped, suddenly they must feel very comfortable and walk right in among them. There are a number of reasons why I believe that the spirits remain here at Gettysburg. First of all, remember, these men knew what they were doing, okay? They were in the Army. They'd been in battles before. They saw men killed. They knew what it was like to be killed in battle by a mini ball or by a canister coming from cannons. They knew that what they were getting into. They also realized that this was going to be a watershed battle. It was the Confederates' farthest advance north. The Union soldiers realized here they were on their home ground north of the Mason-Dixon line instead of down in Virginia, and they had to fight to save their own homes. Not only that, there was a larger issue of the Union, if it was going to be preserved or if it was going to be shattered here at Gettysburg. So the men were worried about, first of all, the existence of the Union, second, or maybe first, their own personal existence or extinction. And then there's one other reason, I think, that spirits linger. And it's because the living mourn too long for them. And they can't move on. And of course, what do you have here at Gettysburg? 1.7 million visitors come here a year, basically to mourn the 51,000 casualties and the many, many others who died in the American Civil War. 620,000 Americans who died in the Civil War. Gettysburg's symbolic of that. They come to mourn these men and ask why they fought, why they died, maybe even why they ever even lived. So this is a great place of mourning, and perhaps that's why these fellas can't move on, because they're being held here by us, the living.